First things first, Alabama Rules of Professional Conduct, Rule 7.2e, requires the following language in all attorney communications. No representation is made that the quality of legal services to be performed is greater than the quality of legal services performed by other lawyers. I'm Harry Still, backwoods Southern lawyer. Mr. Paul Rip of the Rip Report is not with us today. He is out having shoulder surgery in an undisclosed location. For his safety, of course, Reigns. When anybody slipping in there, taking Rip out. And then, of course, Reigns is on the phone with us from Houston, Texas. What's going on out there today, Reigns?
Oh, nothing. It's a beautiful fall afternoon. It's about 80 degrees, and I'm loving it.
All right. So, Nick, give us some camera magic, man. You over there? So, we've got a recap for you today. We're going to talk about the mental health court proposed by Representative Matt Simpson, sewer regulation, Hangout Festival 2020, and Christmas Fest is right around the corner. That's next weekend. We're going to be broadcasting live. So get back over here on me and let's take it from the top. So first of all, we've got a video that we're going to watch, and I believe this is from, do we know what news station we need to give credit to? WPMI, I think it is. So we're going to run that real quick. It's a little recap to give you an idea of what Mr. Simpson's peddling, and then when we come back, we'll talk about it some.
New tonight at 5, a new kind of court may be coming to Baldwin County. The goal is to reduce repeat offenders and repeat arrests and ultimately save taxpayers money.
One Baldwin County lawmaker is working to make mental health court a reality. NBC 15's Andrea Ramey is live with what prompted this. Andrea?
Kim and Greg, jails aren't meant to be mental health hospitals, though many wardens will tell you that's what they've been forced to become. One lawmaker telling me today he wants to reverse that trend.
Before Douglas Dunson was accused of attacking a woman near the RSA Tower and trying to rape her, he was arrested in the months leading up for lower-level offenses like public intoxication and disorderly conduct. Dunson, authorities say, had a history of substance abuse, mental health problems, and his behavior was escalating.
We want to catch them before they commit those violent crimes.
Representative Matt Simpson says creating what's called a mental health court would help. Only suspects charged with nonviolent crimes could be considered. Multiple parties, including the prosecutor and potentially the victim, would have to sign off.
It's very similar to what they do currently for drug court and veterans court to make sure that the person can benefit from the program.
To avoid jail time, the suspect completes the court-ordered treatment they need, which could include inpatient care at East Point Psychiatric Hospital in Daphne. Simpson is working right now on legislation that would fund mental health court for Baldwin County to start with in our area. An upfront cost, he says, well worth protecting potential victims of crime.
They say an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and that's what this is.
This kind of specialized court has been established in 10 other counties in Alabama. Coming up tonight at 6 o'clock, we'll let you know how it's going elsewhere. Andrea Ramey, NBC 15 News.
All right, so we're back. So in Baldwin County, Reigns, we have a drug court, and the purpose of the drug court is to divert nonviolent offenders from the jail. If all they've done is sit in a room by themselves and harm themselves with chemicals, I guess we don't see the point in taking up valuable prison space for violent offenders, these nonviolent offenders. So we have a special drug court here in Baldwin County, and it takes up about a day of one of our circuit judges' time. It's an all-day program, a couple of times a month, and of course, it's a good program, and I'm imagining that's what this mental health court is all about. It's going to be a way to divert people from the prison system if they're truly just mentally ill and nonviolent. But the problem is, number one, how you going to pay for it? Number two, how are you going to staff it? Do we have enough judges to handle adjudication of and who knows how many prisoners there are over in the jail right now that really should be at a facility. Chime in here, Reigns. I mean, it sounds like a good idea, but
Well,
it's all about the details.
truly it is. And I support drug courts across the nation. And I've been involved as a advocate and, believe it or not, even as a guardian ad litem for drug court here in the state of Texas. But I believe in it. I think it's great. But it is a massive undertaking, the drug courts that I've dealt with. When you tell me that you've got a mental health court set up to run the same kind of way that drug court runs, my first question is what kind of medical staff are you going to need to determine the mental health and eligibility of somebody for that? Because in drug court, you've got a small staff of people that just, or you outsource it to a lab that does, urine tests and hair tests and things like that. But it's very easy to determine if somebody needs to be in drug court or not. I can't imagine what the criteria would have to be and how stringent it would have to be to say someone's eligible for mental health court. And I've got a couple of problems with it. Believe it or not, from a legal point of view, if you're determined to be mentally ill, there's something to do with your rights as to how you can even go through court. So are we setting up a giant mental evaluation as an extension of the state hospital? What are they planning on doing with that?
So all I can tell you is how Montgomery County's court works, because I had a brief discussion with Judge Anderson up there, runs their mental health court, and I spoke with a couple of his judicial assistants this morning. And, I don't think they were properly funded. It's certainly not working the way that they want it to. And, I guess the Baldwin County would have to employ, I guess, through some kind of contract with a mental health professional who could be on call to come evaluate these people. Now, I know that in probate court, it's not necessarily a psychiatrist that looks at these folks. I would imagine in circuit court, that would be a requirement. If I were the judge making a determination that we're going to take somebody out of the criminal system and divert them over here. So let's talk about that real quick. The deplorable state of mental health generally in Baldwin County. We used to have an organization called Baldwin County Mental Health, and it became Alta Point Health Systems. Alta Point is, I believe it's a private, not-for-profit, and all those employees went over there. They are overwhelmed. And we're talking about taking people out of this system and diverting them into taking them out of the criminal justice system and diverting them over here into a system that's already overwhelmed. And, I mean, if you're going to do it, that's fine, but you got to find the money to fund this thing. So,
agreed. Yeah, it's gotta go ahead.
So let's pivot from this point into another point. Which is mass shootings, mental health, the Second Amendment, and that's striking pretty close to home. Nick, do you have that graphic that shows just how close we are to NAS Pensacola? About a 45-minute drive from where I'm sitting right now. And there's some people down in Orange Beach that can be there in 15 minutes at the front gates of NAS. So this is something that is happening to us, even though it's over in the state of Florida. And we've got a little clip. There's been some more developments that we'll talk about after this, but we have a clip from the Sheriff's Department. Can you play that for us, please, sir?
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Escambia County Sheriff David Morgan. At approximately 6:51 this morning, the call went out to the Escambia County Sheriff's Office Central Dispatch that there was an active shooter on Naval Air Station, Pensacola. We had 2 units immediately respond, many to come behind, of course. While we would love to do a full disclosure with you this morning about everything that we are aware of, quite obviously we cannot do that. There are things that we are now in the investigative process that are required to be held back by not just the Escambia County Sheriff's Office, but our lead federal agencies, which of course are the FBI and the ATF and the associated federal partners that we have, and the U.S. Attorney's Office is also present. As the mayor said, I want to assure our community that the threat has been negated. Our community is secure at this time. We have no reason to believe or are we looking for any additional shooters within Escambia County, not just within the parameters of NAS Pensacola. I would tell you this strikes home particularly hard for me as a retired military member. Walking through the crime scene was like being on the set of a movie. And as the mayor eloquently put, you just don't expect this to happen at home. This doesn't happen in Escambia County. It doesn't happen in Pensacola. It doesn't happen to our friends and neighbors who are members of the United States Navy. But it did, and it has. And so for now, we're here to pick up the pieces. We have 2 officers at the Escambia County Sheriff's Office in the initial response that negated the threat that are now in a local hospital. We expect them to fully recover. It was a member of the Escambia County Sheriff's Office that did negate the threat. I will share that with you. It was one of our officers that did that. As the captain said, we have as of right now, we do have 4 deceased and approximately 8 total. That includes the ones that have deceased, by the way, that are injured. The crime scene processing continues under the auspices of the FBI and the ATF. We are lending all local assistance that we have to this effort, everything from command buses to, crime scene techs if they are so needed.
No, I got it.
All right, so we're back. Rains, you've been watching the news all morning. Now we know that that this guy was a Saudi national over here training. They, according to the base commander, they have what's known as an international training syllabus where they cross-train with our allies. And right now there are about 200 of those international students, so to speak, on base. Now, NAS Pensacola is right on the water. It is the home of the Blue Angels, which is a Navy's precision flying team. It has 16,000 military personnel and 7,400 civilian personnel. The information that we have now is that that there are 4 dead and ×2 wounded. Is that what you understood to be the situation?
That's correct. That's the up-to-date information. Yeah.
Anything I might have left out that you've gleaned from the reporting so far?
No, it's because of these recent attacks in London and Holland. The media is going to jump on the fact that this person was a Saudi Arabian national. One thing that they won't tell you is that the majority of these students that we get from the international training agreement, especially from Saudi Arabia, most of them are going to be members of the Saudi royal family by some way, shape, or form. The Saudi royal family is absolutely, they permeate every level of the military in Saudi Arabia. And if you're a nephew or a niece of somebody that's got any kind of title and you join the service, they're going to send you here to train. We've trained thousands of personnel of the Saudi Arabian military over the years. And from what I'm understanding, this is the first incident of something like this happening. NAS Pensacola is an extensive training facility for the U.S. Navy and for the U.S. Department of Defense. And it's one of the stepping stones of what's called the National War College. That's where our allies really want their people to train, is at the National War College. And to get there, you've got to go through either advanced flight training or advanced tactical training or something like that in one of these smaller bases like NAS Pensacola or Fort Benning or Fort Ord, something like that. Or Keesler Air Force Base. You've got to go through one of those major things to get to the National War College to qualify for it. Now, this is the first incident of a Saudi national committing anything other than a car wreck on a U.S. military base in the United States. I'm not going to immediately jump on the terrorism bandwagon for that just because he's a Saudi national. I'm just not, because there are so many other things it could be. It would be convenient if it was terrorist related, but everybody knows that if you're a Saudi national and you're terrorist related, you get your military training at private schools in Florida, not at NAS Pensacola. So
training with the FBI, training with the FBI at the flight school, learning to fly, not land 747s, just fly those things.
Right, just how to fly them. Right. So I'm not going to jump on the terrorism bandwagon just yet. I haven't seen enough information. I know that's what everybody wants it to be, because that's a really convenient envelope to stuff this particular shooting in. To me, honestly, it's just another school shooting at this point.
Well, so I went to graduate school at Troy State, and one of the campuses. So before, it wasn't before the internet; it was before internet education. Okay, so
right,
Homeport, Pascagoula, many of the larger naval bases around the world had Troy State University system classes available for people in the Navy.
Correct.
So anyway, I got to go over there and take some of my graduate level classes at NAS Pensacola. Saved me a long drive up to Montgomery or Troy and in the Montgomery area. So I used to drive a Jeep, take the top down, have the doors off. I had a shotgun rack in the back. You should drive on base with it. No problem. Nobody ever said anything to me. And then damn September 11th happened. No dice, man. There's there have been 50 cal set up at all the entrances since that day. So so number one, you can't have a personal weapon on the base at all, right? Isn't that your understanding?
Correct.
If you're
that is correct.
I mean, Patton would have to take his 6-shooters off, right?
That's right. Right. At all U.S. military facilities. Yeah.
Right. So where the hell did this gun come from?
I don't know. I asked the same question. That's why I said, to me, this is just another school shooting. And it's going to come down to where this guy got a weapon from. It's going to come down to why did he have it, what set it off, what was his motive for any of this stuff. One of the biggest misconceptions about the military is that everybody walks around with their weapon on base. They don't.
No.
A few years ago, out in West Texas, we had a
Fort Hood.
Out west, we had at Fort Hood, we had the shooting with that major, shot up committed himself to an active shooter
with 2 handguns
scenario
with 2 handguns.
Right. And everybody thought, well, it's a military base. Where's everybody with the guns? Well, the police have guns on the military base. That's it. And the people that stay in guard duty do, but they're not in the classrooms. The military base aren't these giant armed camps. And weapons are under lock and key. And you can't just, hey, let me go get my rifle and stop this mass shooting incident.
Right. Let me run over to the armory and fill out 7 requisition forms so I can get the components to put it together to have a firearm. I think that's how that works.
Right. And no, that's not at all how that works. It's not. You don't even have eligibility to do that. If in an active shooter scenario, the military trains even the armorer says, lock your door. Don't let anybody in, because there's police on base that are going to take care of something like that. That's what they're for. There is a base security force, and they are available should there be some large level incursion. But that's a whole other thing. They aren't there to do. That's why they have police forces, and a lot of these police forces they're military police, but they're plain clothes. They're in uniform. They're all over the place. They're real police forces. Believe me, I've had plenty tie-ins with the police force at Fort Rucker and Keithler Air Force Base. I'm well accounted with those guys. But you don't just get a gun and walk around. You would get reported. This guy had to have been concealing it for some reason, and because you couldn't just walk in with it stuffed in the back of your uniform and nobody noticed it.
And people are paying attention. Governor DeSantis is at NAS Pensacola. He was a naval, he was a JAG officer, and
right.
I think they've got things well in hand over there. It's just been a bad week for the Navy. This two days in a row.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yep, they had a guy over at Pearl Harbor. At the Leeward base there at Pearl Harbor, at the dry dock facility at the Honolulu Naval Yard. And my first phone call was a friend of mine that works over there at Kaneohe Bay Marine Station, and said, "Hey, is it going on?" I said, "Oh yeah, we're fine. We're on the windward side of the island. nowhere near that. But that was just a guy was mad about something and shot his boss. So, I mean, shit happens even in the military.
Been there, right?
Exactly.
All right, so let's talk about, and I really don't know where you stand on the Second Amendment. I'm an absolutist. Second Amendment. I think we've run all over it already.
I am a libertarian, and by right, I support the Constitution. And so by right, I am in favor of the Second Amendment. But I am in favor of the Second Amendment as it is written.
All right. So
just like I'm in favor of the First Amendment as it is written.
Okay. Let me ask you this. If you're Bill Gates and you can afford a Tomahawk cruise missile and you can buy it directly from Northrop Grumman or whoever builds the damn things, should you be able to possess one? If you're a private
all right,
citizen?
Now that's the absolute diametricity. Let's dial that back a little bit and say if you're Bill Gates and you want to buy an M249 SAW fully automatic, should you be able to possess one? That's the literal argument. Because you can't buy rockets and missiles and shit like that, period. But if you possess what's called a Class 3 destructive devices permit, you can buy hand grenades from the U.S. government and possess them. You can buy 40 millimeter grenades for a launcher and possess it. Maybe you need one, but that's a very tough permit to get, and a very small percentage of Americans actually have those permits. And they're mainly collectors of antique firearms and museum curators and things like that who have tanks, for crying out loud. So, as the law states, there's nothing in the Second Amendment that says you can or can't own a bomb. It comes down to common sense legislation, which we happen to be lacking in this country. As I said before, I'm a staunch protector of the Second Amendment, but I'm also in favor of something that not a lot of people that are in favor of the Second Amendment are, and I believe there ought to be common sense laws, not even laws, but eligibility in court where you can seek civil damages against people who sell guns if those guns are used to commit a crime.
You never.
Now, you say that'll never happen, but let me tell you something. I am a bartender by trade. Do you realize that there is current legislation in place in 47 states that holds me under that exact same law?
You talking about the dram shop laws?
It's dram shop law. I am absolutely civilly and criminally liable for selling someone an intoxicating substance should they happen to hurt someone under the influence of it. And you as a lawyer, you're going to sit there and tell me that the courts would strike down any kind of law that would make a gun seller eligible to the same thing?
Yes. They'll never get through the door. There's an intervening act. You just because I could buy a gun and use it for a paperweight for the next 1,000 years. It could be the Steele family paperweight and be passed down for generations. I would have to do something with that thing for a lawsuit to come about or to be necessitated. So no, I think you got to. I'm going to say bullshit argument. That's a bullshit argument.
All right, well then somebody needs to take up my cause. Needs to take up my cause to get rid of dram shop law for bartenders and liquor retailers across this country. Because if I sell somebody a beer and they get in their car and go kill a family of 5, they're not coming after the person that drove the car. They're coming after me and the company that I have or the bar that I own. That's the law, and it happens every day here in Texas.
I don't disagree with you. Let me ask you this: have you ever bought a gun at a what do they call it, gun show?
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
And it's always like from some guy you wouldn't take a stick of gum from. You know what I mean? He just looks like.
Oh, of course, of course, yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I've never bought a gun at a gun show. I've been to a lot of gun shows, and I bought a lot, magazines and ammo and stuff like that. But I don't want a damn gun somebody's used as a boat paddle. I will use my own gun as a boat paddle, but I don't want a gun that someone else has used as a boat paddle. You know what I mean?
Sure, it's
mine's a reliability issue. I'm not going to buy a gun from some homeless looking dude in a ratty ass sweater that looks like Willie Nelson, and let my life depend on that thing functioning. That's just not. It's never going to happen.
Well, I could get my head around that, and that's a very responsible stance to take as a person who owns firearms. And that's absolutely completely sensible. People can laugh about it all they want, but I'm completely on board with that. But I don't care about anything regarding the sale or whatnot of firearms in this country. It's never going to go away. Do we have a gun problem in this country? Yes, absolutely. We have a huge gun problem in this country, and it is a festering, infected, necrotized boil on the ass of America. And it is never, ever going to go away, simply because there are too many guns in this country for it to go away.
So how about this?
Almost like,
how about my perspective that your personal safety is your personal responsibility, and the police are there to come draw a little chalk line around your ass after somebody's done you in, and then they'll look into it to the best of their ability to try to bring the person to justice. In the meantime, you could have protected yourself or kept yourself out of a situation where you wouldn't be in a position to be shot dead in the parking lot of some bar in downtown Mobile at 3 a.m. You see what I'm saying?
Well,
there's some personal responsibility that plays into all this. And the idea that the police are there to protect and serve, and you're going to pick up the phone and call 911 and somebody's going to be in your driveway in 30 seconds is foolish.
Well, that to me is just that type of thinking, Harry, and I'm not in any way taking away from your own personal belief of it, but that to me speaks more to the mentality of people that want guns. I am in Texas. I am surrounded by the most well-armed citizenry anywhere in North or South America. And I'm here to tell you, I have absolutely zero confidence in any of these people doing anything right with guns. That's why I don't own any.
Well, people
my father said, well, what you...
Dude, there's people doing
my
right
father
things
likes to
with
tell
gun
me
all the time. I mean, it's...
Well, sure there are. And I'm not taking away from that. I'm saying my one of the things my father asked me, he goes, well, what are you going to do if you ever need an AR-15? I said, well, to quote a great movie, if there's ever a time that I need a goddamn AR-15, I'm pretty sure there'll be plenty of them laying around my neighborhood to pick up.
Ask the Koreans
because there's no
who defended their property during the L.A. riots back in the 90s. It's only
sure, and everybody needs a good roof Korean, and that's great. I'm not going to go on a nationally syndicated podcast like we're on and talk about how many guns I own. So, no, you don't know if I have any guns or not. But the point is, there's people around my neighborhood that walk around with them in their yard, for crying out loud, to where if I need one, I know where to get one.
Right.
And Harry, I lived through Katrina. And one of the things I learned from being in Biloxi, Mississippi during Katrina is that everybody that didn't get to shoot at a looter is just waiting for the next hurricane so they can get another chance at it. And people want guns. People need guns because of this sick, ridiculous, mystified notion that these things are going to protect you from all things. I've seen women walk into my bar with a gun in their purse and drink 12 margaritas. What the hell are you going to do with a gun in your purse after something like that? It's so ridiculous to me. It's just this. Most gun owners have this ridiculous fantasy that they want a school shooting to happen so they can stop it.
No. And this is what I try to.
That's ridiculous.
This is what I try to explain to everybody. Never think of a firearm as a problem solver. When you pull that trigger, your trouble's just begun. Whether you hit anybody or not, right? I mean, from a legal perspective, you loose around in somebody's general direction, your troubles have just started. Now, if you did it to protect yourself or someone else, that's a little different deal. But maybe you're wading into a situation that you don't fully understand. Like, we had a young man shot dead at the Galleria. Turns out he wasn't the shooter, but he had a firearm and he was running and he got shot dead by a police officer.
Exactly.
3 years
exactly.
ago. Right.
Yeah.
So
I understand that. I'm a disciple of a guy that you may or may not be familiar with. He's an attorney in California named Massad Ayub. And that man has defended more gun cases. I think he's dead now, but he of natural causes. But he defended and has written countless political treatments on gun use defense and how to defend people in court that use firearms, be they police officers, civilians, or military, whatever. And one of the first things he teaches is that a weapon, you're right, a gun is not a problem solver, and you definitely don't pull a gun to solve anything but your problem. Period. You don't pull a weapon and say, I'm going to solve somebody else's problems, because now you're a criminal.
Indeed.
And that was his assertion of that. He goes, the cops can't tell if you're a person who just wants to help or you're just another jerk with a gun.
Right.
And that's one of the first, that's in his top 5 things. Don't ever pull a weapon to solve a problem that's not yours, because then you're just a criminal. And you start out as a criminal, to speak to what you just said.
Right.
Your hard time pulling the trigger was the easiest thing you did. You're about to have to go to court and defend your actions. And I've lived and died by the things that he said. Every handgun I've ever owned for personal defense that I kept on my person when I carried a permit or in my home was of the same caliber and model that the local police carried. That was one of his first things he'd tell you. He said, find out what the cops carry that. It's easier to defend in court. It looks better in front of the jury if your attorney can say, this is the same weapon the cops carry.
Glock 17?
No, I don't have a Glock 17. I don't own. Okay, I am not currently in possession of any handguns. So
I have a gun trust. So all my guns are owned by 8 other guys, and we have a class. I guess it's a class 3 stamp for a little 22. And so here's how it works. If I had a suppressor and paid for a tax stamp, anyone else who ever took that gun with that suppressor on it and fired it has violated the law. So you create a gun trust and you get everybody in it, and everybody in it can be in possession of that suppressor. And we got it for planting and teaching kids how to shoot without having to wear hearing protection and that kind of thing. All right, so let's talk about what's going on with Baldwin County Sewer Service. Just a quick update. Richard Dayton, who has been on the program with us before, met with a group of concerned citizens and the Public Service Commission. The Public Service Commission is still of the opinion that the legislature must act before the PSC can regulate Baldwin County Sewer Service in particular. My position, as I've discussed in episode 4, is that once they ceased their surface discharge of their effluent and started putting it into the ground, that would have been the catalyst for the PSC coming in and regulating them. Unfortunately, the PSC does not agree. They say we have a local constitutional amendment. Even though the constitutional amendment has no regulation inside of it, it's just a constitutional amendment enabling the legislature to regulate sewer or private utilities in Baldwin County. Sounds to me like this was orchestrated by someone who knew the system. What do you think?
Oh,
do
absolutely.
you think this is some happy accident that Baldwin County Sewer Service is in a position where the PSC can't do anything because there's a constitutional amendment, but the constitutional amendment has no provisions in it to regulate them in any way whatsoever?
Absolutely. It's well laid out. It's like I've said before a couple of podcasts ago. If you want to get, you want to make the big bucks, forget about trying to do a new app startup, just incorporate a small utility somewhere and get it going in Alabama, because it's a libertarian paradise when it comes to municipal utility services. You can just do whatever the hell you want. And yeah, absolutely. Was it orchestrated? Sure, because people, the guys that wear the ties on that side of the aisle, they're the ones that formulate these sorts of strategies, and they've got it laid out, and they can do whatever the heck they want without any sort of public elected oversight.
So Mr. Dayton and his group are meeting with legislators individually to straw poll and see if they can even get enough people together to agree to sponsor a bill. I think Macmillan's on board. I don't know that Elliott has chimed in. Anyway, this thing's a problem, and it's a time bomb. And you've got an absentee landlord on this thing, and I don't see why we're playing around with this guy. I don't see why we're not while the county commission doesn't put a moratorium on it until the PSC gets down here and starts regulating. That would be music to my ears. And another thing that you're going to see is, of course, Baldwin County Sewer Service and whoever they're giving PAC money to has certainly funneled money to all of these legislators. And this is what we call a friction fire, where that money from the contributors gets to rubbing up against what your constituents wants, and it's burned many a damn legislator to the ground. So we'll see how.
Well, it's an awfully comfy fire to sit by for some legislators.
Right.
That's a very comfy campfire to sit by, and they're going to keep doing it as long as the money keeps coming in, until somebody like your county commission steps up and says, "All right, look, this is a major environmental impact and has the potential to be something we have to clean up 20 years down the road. Let's get ahead of it." But of course, that's not going to happen because people in Southern Alabama don't believe in climate change or anything like that. So it's they're willing to dam up creeks, and just like they are here in Montgomery County, Texas, where they're willing to just fill in 260 acres of wetlands, put homes on it, because that means the tax base goes up. It's a short-term grab. It's short-term money that has long-term consequences. But all we can do is just beg and plead for our elected leaders. Hey, do us a favor and make sure that my kid's water isn't going to have a 12% by volume, fecal coli content to it at some point. And make sure the fish I catch in McCurtain's Creek 30 years from now aren't going to have 3 eyes. But that's an awful lot to ask of the Baldwin County Commission.
Well, it's not necessarily the commission. Let's be fair about that. There were a lot of people that had a lot to do with this. I just don't believe the damn Mr. Magoo story. Well, if we didn't have this, we'd be able to do it. But see, we have this, but this doesn't say any way that we have. It doesn't dictate any regulation. You see. I mean, it is the worst damn circular argument I've ever heard.
Well, I know, we shouldn't beat up the county commission, but it's got to start somewhere. Somebody's got to say, somebody who got voted into office has got to say, all right, look, this is enough.
Right.
And it's got to start somewhere, so let it start with them.
Hey, so let's talk about having enough. The citizens of Gulf Shores are raising hell, son. They are tired of this Burning Man at the beach, is what I call it, the Hangout Festival. They just announced their headliner, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, which, of course, Dana, California is in my top 50 favorite songs of all times. I mean, I'd love to go see the Chili Peppers. But I don't necessarily want to be around a bunch of Burning Man people on drugs, peeing in the parking lots, going on private property, breaking into people's cars, tearing up their crap. One guy can make a pile of money.
Well, I mean, that's how it goes. I mean, God bless Ron Myers over in Mississippi. Ron Myers Productions put everything fun you ever went to as a kid together, and you throw something together like Hangout Fest. I mean, hell, I get Hangout Fest promotion stuff here in Texas. Their bands are from all over the country and all over the world, and it's a big haul to ride. And well, Gulf Shore succeeded in getting rid of those dang kids and their spring break beer drinking, and got it replaced by a nice little capital shot in the arm for local businesses by this Hangout Fest. And now the citizenry says, good grief, we don't want this either. Well, where does it stop? What are they going to host the national bocce tournament a couple of years from now? Or are they going to fight Hangout Fest? To me, that's a new development that you said that there's pushback on Hangout Fest and that the permit is on hold. Tell me more about that.
That's all I know is what's been published. The the public information officer for the city of Gulf Shores said that they have the application and they are considering it. I guess that means they won't put it on the agenda until they're good and damn ready to deal with it. And in the meantime, just like we had Greg Kennedy on our show, I want to say it was the 5th or 6th episode, he came on here and that was his opinion, that they can't believe that the mayor and council would perpetuate this upon their own citizenry.
Well, I mean, you got to make money somehow. And so a big festival like that is a great way to make a lot of money. I mean, if you own anything above a hot dog cart in Gulf Shores, you're going to make a fortune.
We'll do it on the river in Marengo County where nobody cares if there's a big mess. That's what I'm saying.
Well, again, the people are going to have to go to their city council. They're going to have to go to their city manager and say, look, we don't want this to happen. And we appreciate the sentiment, thanks for offering all this money, but this is not something we want in our backyard. It's going to be incumbent on them to do that. And if they haven't done that in the past, well, shame on them because you get Hangout Fest out of it.
Right.
So get up, speak up, call your local representative and say, look, I don't want this happening. I'm a citizen, a taxpayer. I don't want this happening, and affect that change, because if not, well, I'm looking forward to the next Hangout Fest. Maybe they'll have a good band headline.
Next weekend, December 14th, Christmas Fest here in North Baldwin. It's going to be the Christmas Fest is going to be back around the square, around the courthouse square here in Bay Minette. We finally have a power booth. We're working on logistics as far as internet connectivity goes, but we're planning on live streaming the parade. We're going to have some information there for you if you want to stop by the booth. Hopefully Paul will be upright if we have to put him on bring the stretcher out with Paul on it and lean him up in the corner. Anyway, T-shirts, huggers, stop by and see us. I think you'll enjoy it. And so since Paul's not here, and I know you are well read on many different issues, let's talk about this Epstein thing for a minute. So, oh yeah, come on, let's talk about Epstein. That's a good one. So,
well, I mean,
let's go back.
Let's hear your slant on it first.
Okay, so my slant on it is August 10th, 2019. He commits suicide in a federal facility in New York City where he is under suicide watch, which means they should have a camera on him and a camera on the hallway, and there are two people that should be looking at the cameras at all times and guards making rounds. So we're supposed to believe that it was a total breakdown, just kind of like this sewer service thing. It's just a series of happy coincidences that result in this guy who knows what, right? We have no idea what this guy knows. But here's the thing that people dismiss, and I want to know what you think about it. Okay, so 2007 down in Florida, he gets a sweetheart deal where he does 13 months spending the night in the jail. Right, he's not in jail; he gets to leave during the day and do whatever. The U.S. attorney for was it the Central District, the Middle District of Florida, Alexander Acosta, who was later interviewed and confirmed as the Secretary of Labor in 2017, when they were questioning him about this sweetheart deal that he helped broker, he said it was his understanding that Epstein was part of the Intelligence Committee and that he was instructed to leave it alone. So he's made millions, even though he's never had a trade. He's a hedge fund manager who has no hedge fund. He lives in the largest private residence in New York City that belongs to somebody else. He's got some island down in the Caribbean where who knows what goes on. My favorite one is in the 2000s, it sounds like a range Russian joke. Bill Clinton, Kevin Spacey, and Chris Tucker all get on a plane to go to Africa to do an AIDS tour. on Jeffrey Epstein's plane. Right? It sounds like a range joke.
Yep.
I mean, it sounds like a great
setup. Sure.
And then on top of that, besides Clinton, old Trump, I don't know how close he was to him, and he said he threw him out of Mar-a-Lago for trying to get some girl to touch his wang up in their massage parlor or whatever. Rightly so. And then, you know, Alan Dershowitz of the Harvard professor who helped spring notorious guy who absolutely did not do it, O.J. Simpson, was Epstein's attorney. And they're talking about cracking attorney-client on, you know, I guess if they could prove that Dershowitz had some kind of criminal culpability. That's one of the very few things that I haven't liked about what's come out of the Trump presidency is the fact that they got to his attorney's correspondence and work product. And now I understand that it was part of a special counsel investigation, so that makes it a little different. But anyway, I got a feeling Dershowitz is not going to have to turn over much of anything, and I think this will fade from the public memory, even though it just happened a few months ago, and it's scary as hell to think that somebody could be murdered, for lack of a better word, in federal custody. And this didn't happen in like the middle of damn nowhere, New York, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, a couple things. At the top of my response is I'm glad that you feel like the only bad thing that's come out of the White House is cracking and client privileges. I'm a little more in tune than everything else that's come out of the White House. But as far as that goes, I'm going to give you the unfettered, non-tinfoil hat personal opinion on this whole Jeffrey Epstein thing.
He killed himself.
First of all, he killed himself. And he did a Frank Pantangeli and bit the bullet because this was a guy emotionally and mentally not sound. And, yeah, he probably fell on his sword just because somebody whispered in his ear, all right, you know, this is what you need to do to take care of this.
So I'm going full black helicopter.
I'm
going full black helicopter and saying, are you sitting here telling me that MI6 doesn't have somebody that could have pulled this off?
Oh, there's no doubt in my mind, and it doesn't even take somebody from an intelligence agency. You get somebody from a law firm to go in there as one of his attorneys and sit down across the table from him and say, look, this only ends one way. Now, the guards who have since been indicted because they basically gun decked their check logs and said, you know, they were sitting in there playing Xbox or whatever instead of checking on these prisoners like they were supposed to on the overnight. That speaks to the fact that this person was not observed. And could somebody have gotten in there? Sure. Could he have done it himself? Sure. My biggest debunk, because I enjoy the meme, I enjoy the humor aspect of it where people are sliding in the Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself thing on national TV and all that. That's all fine and good. The fact of the matter remains is that Jeffrey Epstein may have been the top of some kind of disgusting child prostitution ring, but he wasn't the only one in that pyramid. There were people that worked for him, and they walk free to this day. They've not been arrested. They've not been indicted. There are people out there with as much knowledge of what happened as Jeffrey Epstein had, and they're not afraid to get in a cab. You know, the Clinton Foundation is not out there systemically eliminating everybody associated with this case. You know, and to me, that just says if it was really that big of a deal, there'd be a lot more people in jail right now, or at least in federal custody, undergoing massive questioning as to how this all went down.
So are you aware that Gawker published his little black book, or the Epstein address book? It's not little, it's hundreds of pages long, but it's got like politicians, you could imagine the people in his book.
Sure, absolutely. I can agree. I am a resident in good standing of countless black books across this country. My name's going to appear in people's address books that you would never think. And my personal address book from back in the day when I kept one it had names of all sort of people in it.
Hey,
That doesn't mean anything to anybody.
Did you know anybody in the Ashley Madison leak?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Sure.
There were a couple guys here in Baldwin County. I'm sure they're sweating their balls off, hoping I don't say their names right now. But no, we're not going to say your names because that was just an unfortunate thing that happened.
Yeah, I knew a lot of
the privacy of your own marriage is your business. And if it becomes somebody else's business, remember I do divorces.
My favorite part of that particular scandal is when it was found out that there were more women named Ashley Madison in the United States than there were actual women on the Ashley Madison website.
Right. They're all dating the same 3 women.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah, you're not gonna get me hung up in anybody's black book, man. It is what it is. You know, this whole Epstein thing is a great sideshow, and it makes for good jokes and good humor. It's a horrible, horrible, disgusting thing that exists at so many levels of so many things. And you want to make a big foil hat conspiracy theory that, he couldn't have killed himself and somebody James Bond their way into his cell and off him. More power to you, guys. I regularly have coffee with a guy who firmly believes we faked the moon landing. So it takes all sorts of shafts and gears to run this giant, silly machine of ours.
Well, look, we got more audio-visual equipment than NBC had in 1962 or 69. I don't know how the hell they faked it with this stuff because we're doing the best we can. All right, Raines, what else you got? You got something else for me?
Things been pretty quiet over here in Texas, man. We're suffering through a holiday season, trying to blame the local developer for flooding us twice back in the late summer. And that's chugging along as it needs to go. We're voting in a runoff for our own Donald Trump versus the incumbent here as the mayor of Houston. Tony Busby, a local mass torts attorney, has spent probably about $10 million of his own money to try to beat the incumbent crooked mayor of this town, and he's come as close as anybody to it. We have our special runoff election next week. I don't think he's got a snowball's chance of beating the current elector, but it's been an interesting race to watch. If you want to see somebody funny and looks good in front of a camera, look up Tony Busby for mayor of Houston. This is the same attorney who is running he's running as a Republican candidate, but last year he was a Democrat in good standing, so that's been interesting. He also bought a Sherman tank to park at the end of the cul-de-sac, and he lives in River Oaks, to protest the homeowners covenant about not having cars on the street. This guy's a piece of work. You ought to look him up and give him a glance on the interwebs if you have the time. But other than that, it's been fairly quiet out here in good old Houston, Texas.
Dude, I've read all the law in Alabama on homeowners association in the last 2 weeks, and I don't want to talk about that mess anymore. So a couple of resources that we have for you. We didn't go over them in the podcast in detail, but the Madison County Mental Health Court Protocols. I got those emailed to me today, and we're going to throw those up on Facebook. The other thing that you might be interested in, if you run afoul of the law in the state of Alabama, I've got a little criminal list cheat sheet that has the code sections that correspond to the different infractions of the law, whether it's a felony or a misdemeanor, the sentencing guidelines, the general bail provisions, as I'm aware of. And so anyway, little cheat sheet, 3 pages, might be helpful to you at some point in the future. And one of the things that we're going to try to do while Paul is out with his shoulder is I'm going to do some nuts and bolts, how to file for a protection from abuse order. And we're going to try to figure out some way to do a screen recording of my computer desktop so that we can show you that step by step. Anyway, that's what we're working on. I guess the next time you see us, we'll be sitting on the square December 14th. Raines, I have a surprise for you.
Uh-oh.
The Black Friday ferry came, and I have your laptop here that we're going to be mailing out to you. So this should be the last time. Yeah. So you got to like take off the wife beater with the big mustard stain, and put up. You can't be wife beater, boxer shorts, and flip flops anymore when you're on the podcast. You're gonna have to church it up a little bit. I
planned on writing that off as a uniform tax deduction at the for my taxes next year. Is my podcast uniform that I wear.
Podcast,
and the but I guess I'll get on cam for y'all. Just please keep in mind that the Google Chromebook adds 70 pounds.
It does it.
Films
Well, I must have 7 Google Chromebooks on me then. All right, partner. Well, we certainly appreciate you participating, and we will see you next time.
As
Everybody
always.
have a good thought for Paul, who is recovering from shoulder surgery today. So we'll keep you posted on Paul, and we'll see you on the 14th from the Courthouse Square here in Bay Minette, Alabama. Y'all have a good one.